is the year 2021. Star Saber, Victory Saber, Haslab reveal. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And last Friday was the Fans First Friday look at the very first promotion of the Haslab project to fund Victory Saber. So there was a lot of excitement and some disappointment, but mostly a lot of excitement about the new Haslab project. So last year we had Haslab Unicron, and that was successfully backed, and everybody got a really giant, awesome looking Unicron. And now, this year, they're doing the character Victory Saber from the Japanese season 6 of the Transformers, which featured the character Victory Saber from the Transformers Victory anime. And what a very interesting reveal it was. So they didn't have the full color figure in hand, but they did have the gray plastic model to show off how it's going to basically look, scale, and what we can basically expect to see from this project. So it was, first of all, the Brain of Courage, which is kind of like a little headmaster, but they're called Brain Masters in this case. The character Saber, that the Brain of Courage will plug into, and who will later upgrade into Victory Saber, which is the pretty much the figure that everybody wants from the anime Victory. And as a bonus, they are also including Victory Leo, which is kind of what could I compare it to? Probably how Jinrai combines with God Bomber to become God Jinrai. That's as close of an approximation as I can make it. So a little figure just keeps on getting into bigger bodies, kind of like a Russian doll, is essentially what's going on here. Now, as of this recording, the project has already reached 4,500 backers, and its target is 11,000. So it's almost halfway there. It's going to get funded, I'm sure. We're still at 42 days left. This is going to end about mid-October, and they're already releasing the tiers list for what bonuses they're going to throw in for reaching the first milestone of 11,000. And obviously it's going to back the project up. But then we have some other things. So at 14,000, it's also going to come with the V-Lock cannon. And then at 17,000, it's undetermined yet. They're keeping it a mystery, but I'm sure they will reveal what those are after the first tiers are unlocked. And there's a final tier at tier 3. I'm assuming that's the final tier, which gets unlocked at 20,000. And I don't know what those are. So if I could just kind of back off here for a second. So I am kind of in the dark when it comes to Transformers Victory. I didn't grow up with that anime, and I have very little understanding of what that character is, other than he's supposed to be basically a new leader of the Autobots at some point in the future, after the American show ended. I don't want to say American, but like the West version of the cartoon ended with season 4, and it was a 3-episode series with the Headmasters, in which Cybertron is basically revived, and the Japanese anime went in a totally different direction, expanding upon season 4 with more creative uses of the Headmasters, the Target Masters, and ultimately it ends up being that Rodimus is kind of pushed aside, and Fortress Maximus and Cerebros become the new leaders of the Autobots. And then season 5 is God Master Force, and that one had to do with God Jinrai, and it almost felt like a side story in a way, because it didn't really build off of the continuity of the previous seasons. Kind of, but not really. It was kind of its own self-contained thing. And then for Victory, it's even further in the future. Some point after season 5, and by that point, there's another new leader of the Autobots and another new leader of the Decepticons. And so, I think for Western audiences, the character of Star Saber has always kind of been a bit of a mysterious figure because, I mean, unless you're really deep into the lore of this stuff, if you're your basic schmo, if you're your average Transformers fan, then you know that the leader of the Autobots is Optimus Prime. Who in the heck is Star Saber, right? But these characters are known in the East, at least in Japan, and I think for a long time they've been trying to bring over a lot of these Japanese known characters that don't have any strong foundation in the West. And every time that they try to release these characters, there's always going to be some issue with the merchandise not really finding its audience. So, to give you an example, Overlord was a character that appeared, a Japanese exclusive, and also a European exclusive figure back from the early days of Generation 1. Never saw an American release, and that figure came out, a new version of it in Titan's Return, and it was, somewhere in the middle road of success. But I would say that Overlord just, he's still not very well known. Not like the likes of Megatron, Soundwave, or Starscream. Anybody can pick up those characters and figure out who they are. So in order for these characters to find the audience here in the West, because obviously these characters do have their fans, Hasbro's always going to need to take a risk with these characters. So do you release them in limited installments like Generation Selects, where you have these sort of unknown figures being released in small batches? That's a route, and this is a different route. So they're using the Haslab platform to bring us characters now that I guess they don't really feel confident going to retail release. So rather than taking that gamble, they're shifting the gamble onto the buyers. And it kind of makes sense because if people want it, they'll get it. And there's no risk of it sitting on a shelf at retail and nobody picking it up. And I mean, there is precedence for this. People are, buyers, I should say, are a fickle group. Double Dealer, I thought, was an amazing figure. Just an amazing toy. And I thought that his depiction in that Netflix series, Earthrise, was pretty good. But I see that his toy isn't selling very hotly. I don't know why that is, but if I had to take a guess, it would probably just be relatively obscure of a character. So now what do you do with Star Saber? Star Saber as a figure was sort of like Fortress Maximus, where you have an itty-bitty headmaster who climbs into a slightly larger figure, who climbs into a slightly larger figure, and can also change into an airplane. He has a platform, and he can combine with a giant lion friend so that he becomes an even bigger figure. They didn't release God Bomber over here when they did God Jinrai, but that would have been an amazing figure. But who knows that character in the West, unless you are really deep into the lore. Who are these characters? But I feel like the tide is turning. And what's exciting me is this release of Star Saber opens yet another door. They took a risk with, bringing forth more Beast Wars characters because, G1 is basically their bread and butter. They're always going to make money off of that. But when they did the Kingdom release with Beast Wars figures, that was very successful. And now that means that they can take even bigger risks with other characters. So they do this, right? They will put out a character from a series and see how that does. And if it's moderately successful, then they'll put out more. You put out an Armada figure, and then you're going to get more Armada characters later on. So, if they release a character here from Victory, basically the head honcho of Victory, then that means that you can probably expect to see Deathsaurus. The it's the Megatron to Star Saber's Optimus Prime. You could probably expect to see the rest of the Brain Masters who also have the Brain Master gimmick. And, more and more characters can be released that way. That's what is exciting about it, is that it presents more opportunities, more possibilities, and I don't know how you feel, but for me, G1 has found great, awesome figures recently at retail. We've gotten pretty much every character from G1, from Season 1, and what's left? Well, there's a whole horde of Japanese exclusives, international characters that are relatively unknown. There are so many characters that it'd be nice to see some of these characters because they would probably make great figures. So for me, it's about the playability. It's about finding just new stuff, new characters, new stories, and that's always going to be exciting to myself. I don't know about you, but that's why I found this to be exciting. Let me talk about the size of the figure. It's not going to be huge. It's probably going to be Overlord size, maybe as big as Jetfire is when he's all combined with all his parts and accessories. And to some people, that might not seem like a large figure, but it looks like what they're trying to do is make it to scale with the rest of the deluxe line. So it really does feel like this was supposed to be a retail figure, and then they just decided to make it a Haslab project instead. I think that's fine. You may disagree, but I think that this might have been probably the best choice. Maybe it's the choice that makes most sense. Maybe it's not the best choice from a consumer point of view, but I think for Hasbro, well, who knows how their decisions are made. I certainly don't. So, just from the outside looking in, it just seems like this is, they're shot in the dark, and if it's successful, hey, more stuff can come later on. I'm just hoping that it is a success, because then it would show to Hasbro that yes, there's definitely a larger audience for relatively obscure Transformer figures. So the fact that it has a Brain Master partner means that if they do eventually release the other Brain Master figures, that they'll probably have that kind of swappability in the same way that the Titan Masters and Headmasters could swap heads with each other. That was part of the play pattern. That was part of the gimmick, that you could mix and match these different heads. And in the fiction that they were trying to build, to create different powers for different characters. And you could have the head of say Chrome Dome be on the shoulders of Hardhead and transfer his data and reasoning, whatever. It's the lore. And in a similar vein, if you had a colossal figure, if Victory Saber was not at the size that they were going to sell him at, if it was more of a masterpiece figure, well then I don't know if that it would scale that well with the other retail figures, and maybe that's what this is all about. Maybe it's just about compatibility and exchangeability with other miniature figures, so that you could put somebody else in the cockpit of Star Saber's airplane mode if you wanted it to. I'm just spitballing here. This is just speculation, but this is something that I saw. For what this is, I don't know. I'm excited. I've already backed it. I've already contributed. I'm going to get more than one, because you know how these Haslab projects go. You buy one, and then later on nobody can find it, and then it's going to be double, triple the price before you know it. Unicron was a good example of that. So, I wanted to also talk about some other figures. So I was this is the part of the live stream that was a bit of a disappointment, is that I was fully expecting them to talk about Wave 4 of Kingdom and also some of the leaks that have shown up, and they didn't touch on these at all. And these have been circulating the web for a while now, and so I figured, well, it's up to YouTube to pretty much give you the info, I suppose. But Wave 4 of Kingdom, they've already, these have been flying around. There are images of Shadow Panther, Waspinator, Tigertron, Slammer, and Pipes. All of these are bound to be in Kingdom. Shadow Panther, obviously, he's going to be a remold probably of Tigertron. Could be Cheetor, I suppose, but basically that cat body with a mutant head. And Waspinator is going to be in Kingdom as well. That was pretty much expected, no surprise there. Then you have Tigertron again, no surprise. The big cat to the little cat, and then you have Pipes, who's looking like a remold of a Huffer. So that guy's gonna be here. And then here's an interesting one. Slammer is a character that was one of Metroplex's drone companions. He used to be a tank, and one of the gimmicks that is listed here is that he'll become a tower, so kind of like the original G1 figure could do. This led me to believe that they were going to probably reissue some version of Metroplex into Legacy, and so the fact that Slammer's coming out leads credence to that. And Slammer looks like he's going to be another one of those modulator types where he becomes a weaponizer and can form parts and bits to other action figures. Okay, so that's Kingdom Wave 4. And then there were a bunch of other leaks. So I've seen images of a puffer floating around. This is, I think it was a Brazilian release of the Huffer mold with slightly different colors, and named Puffer, like the pufferfish. So there's that character. And there's also been these images floating around of a Re-formatted Galvatron figure. So mostly purple with some of that pink cross-hatching design that looks the way that Galvatron appears as he's being changed from Megatron into Galvatron by Unicron. This figure is going to be coming with two of his weapons, which are basically small Revenge ships. The Revenge was Galvatron's ship in the 1986 movie, and accompanying these two weapons, which he already has in Kingdom, it looks like this release is also going to give him two additional ships that scale with the Revenge. One is the Corkscrew Quintesson ship. The other one is the Junkion ship. These were the two ships in the 1986 movie that Hot Rod and the others were flying in as they escaped from the Junk Planet and the Quintesson Planet and crashed in through the eyes of Unicron. So it's assumed that these are meant to be used with the Unicron Haslab release, and there was a plastic display that had settings for other additional ships. Now we know these are the additional ships that go onto that display, and because of that, I'm wondering if they're going to include some kind of Unicron accessory to go with this Galvatron, because aside from everything that's been I mentioned so far, this Galvatron figure looks like it's going to come with more of those really, really tiny figures that, like the Optimus Prime that came in the Centurion drone weapon pack. there was a tiny Optimus Prime, and you could fit that with the Unicron set. It also fits in the Autobot arc. The mainframe figure has a little section that looks like the deck of the arc, and you can put that little Optimus Prime there. There's also been the Hot Rod release and the Galvatron that came with Unicron, but now it looks like there's going to be something like 10 other additional little minifigures that you can put into that deck, the arc deck display, and it's going to come with the release of this reformatted Galvatron. Hey, so again, it's kind of a surprise that they didn't mention any of this stuff, but they really should have, because this is really exciting, and I think that we might get a Unicron head, just a standalone head with this reformatted Galvatron. I'm just guessing, but that'd be really cool if they did something like that. So that's all I have for you guys today. I'm pretty excited that there's all these new leaks floating about. I wish that they were coming from Hasbro themselves, because maybe they just figured, they'll figure it out. Why spend any hours releasing this information? They've got it already. So here's the information, guys. Thank you for your time. See you next time.